In the farthest reaches of North America, where the landscape stretches from jagged mountain peaks to vast, icy oceans, lies the land of the Alaskan Natives. This is a place of extremes, where the sun barely sets in summer, and in winter, it disappears for weeks, leaving the land in a long, cold night. It is a land where the wind howls relentlessly, and the snow can fall for days, blanketing everything in a quiet, ghostly white. For thousands of years, this environment has shaped the lives of the people who call it home. The Alaskan Natives, a collective term for various indigenous peoples of Alaska, have a deep and intricate connection to the land. Their history stretches back over 10,000 years, and they are believed to be descendants of people who crossed the Bering Land Bridge from Asia during the last ice age. While their cultures are diverse, each with unique languages, traditions, and ways of life, they all share a profound bond with the natural world, one that dictates how they live, what they eat, and how they survive the unforgiving environment. This story begins with a land that is as beautiful as it is brutal. Alaska's geography is as varied as it is vast. To the south, you have the lush coastal rainforests that provide a stark contrast to the Arctic tundra to the north. The interior of Alaska is dominated by towering mountain ranges and dense forests, while the western coast is a world of icy waters, windswept beaches, and snow-covered landscapes. For the Alaskan Natives, the land is both their provider and their challenge. Inuit, Aleut, Yupik, Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian are the names of some of the tribes that have called this land home for generations. Each group has adapted to the environment in their own way, developing unique customs, practices, and languages. These tribes, though different, are bound by their dependence on the land and sea, which shape their way of life. The Inuit, who inhabit the northernmost parts of Alaska, are perhaps the most widely known group. Their ancestors, who traveled from Siberia, adapted to the harsh Arctic conditions by developing ingenious tools and methods for survival. The Inuits' houses, called igloos, are made of blocks of ice, designed to trap heat and provide shelter from the bitter winds outside. They are experts at hunting sea mammals like seals and walruses, using harpoons, kayaks, and sleds pulled by dogs to navigate the icy terrain. The Inuit language, with its intricate and expressive words for snow, ice, and weather, reflects their deep understanding of the environment around them. In their world, survival is a delicate balance of knowledge, skill, and respect for nature. Further to the west, the Aleut people inhabit the Aleutian Islands. Their lives are shaped by the ocean, and their skills in fishing, whaling, and sea hunting are unmatched. The Aleut lived in barabaras, semicircular, turf-covered houses that were well insulated for the long, cold winters. They crafted waterproof clothing from animal skins, which allowed them to brave the freezing waters in their small boats. Called bidarkas, for the Aleut, the sea was a constant presence, and they became exceptional navigators and hunters of marine life. Their language, like many indigenous languages, is deeply tied to the landscape they inhabit, with words that describe everything from the types of fish to the behavior of the tides. To the southwest, the Yupik people have lived along the coast of Alaska for centuries, hunting whales, seals, and caribou. The Yupik, like the Inuit and Aleut, are masters of hunting and fishing, but their culture also includes elaborate ceremonies and dances, rich oral traditions, and a spiritual connection to the land. Their homes were often made from sod and driftwood, blending seamlessly with the environment. The Yupik language, still spoken today, is a vibrant part of their identity, carrying the stories and wisdom of their ancestors. In the southern coastal regions of Alaska, the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian peoples have created a rich, artistic culture that is heavily influenced by their access to the sea and forests. These groups, known for their elaborate totem poles and intricate wood carvings, have a unique social structure that includes clans and a deep respect for the natural world. The Tlingit and Haida, in particular, are famous for their large, multifamily longhouses made from cedar logs. These homes were often decorated with carvings of animals, birds, and mythological creatures, reflecting the connection between the people and the spirit world. The Tlingit language, rich in storytelling, contains deep metaphors for the animals and forces of nature that play central roles in their cosmology. The languages spoken by the Alaskan Natives are as diverse as the people themselves. While many of these languages are related, each has its own unique structure and vocabulary. The languages are not just a means of communication but are deeply intertwined with culture, history, and the ways the people see the world. These languages have been passed down through generations, often orally, and they carry with them the stories of the land, the animals, the seasons, and the people. In the early days, the Alaskan Natives lived in small, isolated communities. Each group was autonomous, relying on their environment for food, shelter, and tools. Hunting, fishing, and gathering were essential to their way of life. The people of the north hunted caribou and seals, while those of the coastal regions depended on whales, fish, and sea mammals for sustenance. Every part of the animal was used: meat for food, skins for clothing, bones for tools, and even the fat for fuel. The social structure of the Alaskan Native communities varied, but most were organized around extended families or clans. Elders held great respect, as they were the keepers of knowledge and traditions. The sharing of resources was central to the way of life. A successful hunt was not just a personal achievement but a communal one, and food was shared among the group. The belief in reciprocity and the interconnectedness of all things, the animals, the land, the sea, and the people, was fundamental to their survival. The spiritual beliefs of the Alaskan Natives were deeply connected to the natural world. They believed that the animals and elements of nature were sentient beings with their own will and power. Respect for animals was integral to their survival, and hunters often performed rituals to honor the spirits of the animals they hunted. The practice of animism, believing that all things in nature have a spirit, was a common thread that ran through the various tribes, connecting them to the environment in a sacred and reciprocal way. Though the natives lived in relative isolation for many centuries, their lives were not without contact with the outside world. Early explorers, missionaries, and traders from Russia, Spain, and later the United States began to make their way to Alaska in the 18th century. These encounters often led to tension and conflict, as the newcomers brought new diseases, technologies, and ways of life that disrupted the traditional systems of the Alaskan Natives. Despite this, many of the tribes managed to retain their cultural practices and traditions, adapting and evolving in response to the changing world around them. As the 20th century progressed, the Alaskan Natives faced even greater challenges with the arrival of statehood, modernity, and the loss of traditional lands. The introduction of new industries, such as oil and gas exploration, led to the displacement of many native communities. However, the resilience of the Alaskan Natives remains strong. Today, they continue to maintain their cultures, languages, and traditions, even as they adapt to modern society. For the Alaskan Natives, the connection to the land is more than just a means of survival. It is an integral part of their identity. The stories of the land, the animals, and the sea are passed down through generations, ensuring that the bond between the people and their environment endures. And as the world changes around them, they continue to live in harmony with the land, carrying the wisdom of their ancestors into the future. For the Alaskan Natives, survival has always been about more than just subsistence. It has been about a deep understanding of the land and its rhythms, the ability to live in harmony with nature rather than in opposition to it. The land, with all its challenges, was their teacher, and they, the students, every tree, every river, every gust of wind, every shift in the season was read, understood, and respected. It is no surprise that their survival depended not just on physical strength, but on an intricate knowledge of the environment and how to harness its resources sustainably. in a place where the weather can swing from brutal storms to periods of endless daylight. Shelter was not just a matter of comfort, it was a matter of life or death. The way in which the Alaskan Natives built their homes reflected both their resourcefulness and their deep understanding of the natural world around them. For many of the Arctic peoples, such as the Inuit, the igloo is one of the most iconic symbols of their ingenuity. These igloos were not the tiny, dome-shaped structures that modern culture often portrays them to be, but large, multi-chambered dwellings that were capable of holding entire families. Built from blocks of compacted snow, these igloos offered a surprising level of warmth. Snow, despite its coldness, is a poor conductor of heat, and the igloo's tightly packed walls could trap warmth from a small stove or the body heat of those inside. Even in temperatures that plummeted far below freezing, the entrance would be a tunnel, designed to keep the cold air from rushing in every time someone entered or exited. For the Yupik, the homes were quite different. They constructed semi-subterranean houses, dug into the earth to help insulate against the intense cold. These homes were often built with driftwood, sod, and animal skins, materials readily available in the surrounding environment. The roofs were thatched with grasses or covered in snow to provide additional insulation, making the inside warmer even as the temperatures outside could drop to unbearable levels. These houses were typically shared by extended families, and the design was communal, with multiple rooms that allowed for different activities: sleeping, cooking, and even storing food to prevent it from freezing. Along the Pacific coastline, in the temperate rainforests, the coastal tribes like the Tlingit and Haida built longhouses, which were not only homes but also centers of social and ceremonial life. These houses were massive, often made from large cedar planks, with roofs that slanted down sharply to protect against the heavy rainfall. Inside, the longhouses were arranged in a communal style, with individual sleeping platforms along the walls. The longhouse was a place where families came together to share space, food, and stories, reinforcing the strong bonds of kinship and community. Whether built from snow, earth, or wood, the homes of the Alaskan Natives were designed not just for shelter, but to foster community. They were spaces where survival was a collective effort, where knowledge was passed down from one generation to the next, and where the rhythms of the land were echoed in daily life. If shelter was essential for surviving the extreme weather, food was equally vital for survival. The Alaskan Natives' relationship with food was one of respect, reverence, and deep knowledge, unlike many modern societies, where food is a commodity easily accessible in supermarkets. The Alaskan Natives had to rely on their skill, patience, and understanding of the natural world to gather food. For the Inuit and other Arctic peoples, the hunt was a year-round activity, one that dictated the rhythm of their lives. Their primary source of food came from the animals that thrived in the cold. Harsh environment: seals, whales, walruses, caribou, and polar bears. The Inuit were expert hunters, known for their remarkable skill in navigating the icy wilderness, tracking animals, and hunting with tools they made themselves, such as harpoons, knives, and spears. The hunt was not only about providing for the community, it was also a way of reinforcing their relationship with the land and animals. Hunting was guided by deep spiritual beliefs, with rituals and prayers offered to the animals for their sacrifice. The Inuit also practiced ice fishing, using lines and nets to catch fish like trout, salmon, and whitefish. Ice fishing required immense patience and the ability to understand how fish behaved under the ice during the harsh winters. The skill of knowing where to fish, how to cut the right-sized hole in the ice, and how to keep the catch fresh were passed down through generations, ensuring that food could be gathered even in the coldest months. In the interior and coastal regions of Alaska, the Yupik and Aleut also relied heavily on the ocean for sustenance. They hunted sea mammals, including seals and sea lions, which provided meat, blubber, and skins for clothing. The hunt was a communal event, often involving groups working together to capture and butcher the animals. The skins were not wasted, they were used to create clothing, tents, and even boats, such as the Umiak, a large open boat used by the Aleut and other coastal peoples. The blubber of the animals provided vital fat, which was essential in the freezing temperatures of the winter months. The Tlingit and Haida, living in the temperate rainforests along the southern coast, relied on a different set of resources, with salmon being the cornerstone of their diet. Salmon runs were crucial to their survival, and these communities developed elaborate systems for fishing, including the use of weirs, nets, and fish traps. Salmon were caught in abundance, smoked, dried, and preserved for winter months. The Tlingit and Haida also hunted sea otters, seals, and whales, and foraged for a variety of edible plants, berries, and roots. Beyond hunting, the Alaskan Natives were skilled at preserving their food. Drying, smoking, fermenting, and freezing were common methods for ensuring that food would last through the long winters. These preservation techniques were passed down through generations, and they reflected a deep understanding of the natural world. For instance, the process of drying fish or meat allowed the Alaskan Natives to store food for the months when hunting or fishing was not possible. The tools and technologies of the Alaskan Natives were deeply tied to their surroundings. Whether crafted from bone, wood, stone, or ivory, each tool had a specific purpose, and each was a product of the resourcefulness and ingenuity of its maker. One of the most iconic tools was the harpoon, used by the Inuit and other Arctic groups to hunt large sea mammals like whales and walruses. These harpoons were made of bone or ivory and often featured barbed heads that would lodge in the animal's flesh once thrown. The harpoons were connected to a line made from seal gut or other materials, allowing the hunter to track the animal once it had been struck. The Aleut people, living along the Aleutian Islands, were renowned for their skill in crafting kayaks and umiaks, small boats that allowed them to navigate the icy waters and hunt marine mammals. These boats were made with frames of driftwood and covered with skins, typically from seals or other sea mammals. The construction of these boats was an art in itself, requiring precise knowledge of materials and skillful craftsmanship. In the temperate coastal regions, the Tlingit and Haida developed tools and weapons made from the rich resources of the forest. They crafted intricate wooden boxes, canoes, and ceremonial masks, many of which were adorned with carvings of animals that held spiritual significance. The Tlingit, for example, were known for their beautiful totem poles, which told stories of their ancestors, clan histories, and the spiritual world. Beyond tools, the Alaskan Natives also developed various techniques for navigating their environments. They had a detailed understanding of the stars, the weather, and the landscape itself, which helped them travel across the vast and often featureless tundra or through the dense, foggy forests. They used landmarks like specific mountains, rivers, or unique trees to orient themselves, and their oral traditions passed down this knowledge to ensure that the younger generations would be able to survive in the same unforgiving landscapes. In the remote corners of Alaska, where the land itself seems as vast and uncharted as the sky above, the Alaskan Native tribes built communities not just for survival but for the flourishing of their culture, identity, and connection to the land. These communities, though spread across a wide expanse, shared a common foundation of resilience, respect for nature, and a strong sense of belonging. At the core of every Alaskan Native community was the family, a unit not just of blood, but of responsibility. The structure of these families varied depending on the specific tribe or group, but there were shared values that united them. Among the Inuit, for example, the family unit was central to survival. The harsh conditions required everyone to work together. Tasks were divided according to age and ability, and even the youngest children had roles to play, whether it was carrying small tools or helping with basic chores. Elders were regarded with profound respect for their wisdom and knowledge, serving as the storytellers and the keepers of traditions. The Yupik, who lived along the southwest coast of Alaska, placed a similar importance on family and community bonds. The kinship system was complex, and relationships within the family extended to larger social networks that transcended individual households. The concept of reciprocity was deeply embedded in their way of life, meaning that giving and receiving help was not seen as a favor, but as a fundamental duty to maintain harmony and balance in the community. The Inuit and other groups also had social structures based on hunting and the division of labor. Hunting, fishing, and gathering were not solitary activities, but collective efforts requiring a high degree of coordination. Everyone, from the oldest to the youngest, had a part to play in ensuring that the group survived through the harsh winters and the unpredictable seasons. Success was never the achievement of one person, but of the entire community. The social structures within these tribes also extended to leadership. Leadership among the Alaskan Natives was not necessarily based on the accumulation of wealth or power, but rather on respect earned through wisdom, experience, and the ability to make decisions that benefited the group. Leaders, often referred to as elders, played key roles in decision-making, particularly when it came to matters of migration, hunting, and social conflicts in the Inuit communities. For example, leaders were often chosen for their deep knowledge of the land and their ability to maintain peace within the group. Language, too, played a crucial role in shaping the identity of these communities. For the Alaskan Natives, language was not simply a tool for communication, but a vessel for preserving history, culture, and identity. Many of the native languages spoken by Alaskan tribes are complex, with words and phrases that reflect the profound connection between the people and the land. The Inuit language, Inuktitut, for example, is rich in terms for snow, ice, and weather conditions, concepts that were vital to survival in the Arctic environment. The vocabulary used by the Inuit reflects an intimate relationship with nature, one that goes beyond mere physical survival. There are dozens of different words to describe the various types of snow, ice, and wind, as well as the subtle shifts in the environment that could signal a coming storm or a change in the migratory patterns of animals. This rich lexicon, passed down through generations, allowed the Inuit to read the landscape with an almost supernatural precision. Similarly, the Yupik language, spoken by the people of southwestern Alaska, is filled with terms that describe the natural world in intimate detail. The Yupik language also emphasizes the importance of relationships and community, with specific words that describe the bonds between family members and the reciprocal obligations that tie them together. The Tlingit language, spoken by the Indigenous people of Southeast Alaska, is also deeply connected to the land. The Tlingit people have a rich oral tradition, with storytelling being a central part of their culture. These stories, often told in the Tlingit language, serve not only as entertainment but as important lessons about the natural world, the values of the tribe, and the history of the people. In Tlingit culture, storytelling is a way of preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations, a practice that ensures the survival of both language and culture. For many of the Alaskan Native tribes, their languages were, and in many cases, still are, endangered. The arrival of European settlers, missionaries, and governments led to the decline of many indigenous languages, as English became the dominant language in schools and in daily life. However, in recent decades, there has been a resurgence in efforts to revitalize these languages. Schools, community centers, and cultural organizations across Alaska are working to teach and preserve the native languages, ensuring that future generations can connect with their heritage and culture through the words of their ancestors. The relationship between the Alaskan Native people and the land is not just practical, but spiritual. For these tribes, the natural world is alive with spirits and forces that guide and protect them. The mountains, rivers, animals, and even the winds are seen as sentient beings with whom humans must maintain a respectful relationship. This spiritual connection to the land is not a relic of the past, but a living, breathing part of daily life that continues to shape the worldview of Alaskan Natives. For example, The Inuit believed in a spirit world that was closely tied to the natural world. They revered animals such as the polar bear, seal, and whale, seeing them as both physical beings and spiritual entities. Hunting, then, was not just about procuring food, but about maintaining a respectful relationship with the animals. In many Inuit communities, there were rituals and prayers said before a hunt to ask for the animal's permission and to ensure that the hunt would be successful. Similarly, the Tlingit people have a strong spiritual connection to the natural world. They believe in a pantheon of spirits that inhabit the mountains, forests, and oceans. Their totem poles, which are famous for their intricate carvings, represent animals and spirits that are considered ancestral beings. The Tlingit people view these totems not as mere artwork, but as symbols of their connection to the spiritual forces of the land. The totem pole is a living record of the tribe's history, beliefs, and values. For the Yupik, spirituality is deeply embedded in their daily activities. From hunting and fishing to seasonal migrations, the Yupik believe in spirits that reside in all living things, and these spirits must be respected and honored. For instance, when hunting sea mammals, the Yupik perform rituals to show gratitude to the animals for their sacrifice. These ceremonies ensure that the cycle of life continues in harmony and that the spirit world remains balanced. The arts and crafts of the Alaskan Natives are not just decorative. They are deeply functional and tied to their survival. In many cases, the items they crafted, whether it was clothing, tools, or art, served practical purposes. At the same time, they were also expressions of their culture, beliefs, and connection to the world around them. The Inuit, for instance, are known for their skill in creating functional and beautiful clothing made from animal skins. Their parkas, boots, and mittens were designed not just to protect against the cold, but to reflect the wearer's status and identity within the community. These garments were often decorated with intricate beadwork, stitching, and designs that told a story of the wearer's family, tribe, and experiences. Similarly, the Tlingit people are renowned for their intricate woodwork and weaving. Their totem poles, masks, and bentwood boxes are not only artistic masterpieces but also carry deep cultural significance. Each carving, each design, has a specific meaning, often tied to the clan or family lineage of the creator. These artworks serve as a form of communication, telling the stories of their ancestors and passing on important lessons to future generations. For the Yupik, carving was an important part of their culture. They carved figures from ivory, wood, and bone, creating representations of animals, spirits, and ancestors. These carvings were often used in ceremonies and rituals, serving as both offerings to the spirits and as a means of preserving the stories and legends of the tribe. Through storytelling, these tribes passed down their history, wisdom, and values. Storytelling was not just a form of entertainment but a means of teaching the younger generation about the world around them. Elders were the keepers of these stories, and it was their job to ensure that the knowledge of the tribe was not lost. The stories often revolved around the natural world, the animals, the seasons, and the cycles of life, and they were told with the same reverence and respect that the Alaskan Natives showed toward nature itself. Hunting and fishing were not just means of subsistence for the Alaskan Native tribes. They were also acts of reverence for the natural world. The relationship between the people and the animals they hunted was one built on respect, ritual, and a profound understanding of the delicate balance between human life and the natural ecosystem. It was a system of reciprocity, where animals were seen as willing participants in a cycle that gave life to the people. And in return, the people would honor the animal spirits and take only what they needed. The Inuit, for example, are renowned for their skill as hunters in the most extreme environments. Their primary prey were sea mammals, seals, walruses, and whales, whose blubber and meat provided the bulk of their diet. While the skins were used for clothing, tents, and tools, they would hunt in small groups, using kayaks to glide silently through the icy waters, or travel on snowmobiles and sleds in the winter months. Their hunting methods were designed to blend into the environment, taking advantage of the ice flows and the visibility of the long, dim days of the Arctic winter. Perhaps one of the most striking features of Inuit hunting was the use of the harpoon. The harpoon, often with a barbed tip, was used for larger marine mammals, like whales and walruses. The harpoon was a symbol of strength, skill, and connection to the sea, and Inuit hunters would often rely on their knowledge of the tides, the behavior of animals, and the ice conditions to plan their hunts. The practice was not just about hunting for food, it was a way of sustaining life, understanding the rhythms of nature, and paying homage to the animals that provided them with sustenance. For the Aleut people, who lived along the Aleutian Islands, hunting was similarly tied to the sea. The sea otter, sea lion, and whale were critical to their way of life, and the Aleuts became master hunters and navigators. They crafted large, skin-covered boats known as bidarkas, sleek, single or double-hulled kayaks used to travel across the turbulent waters. The bidarkas were ingeniously designed, allowing hunters to move swiftly and silently on the water, giving them a significant advantage in hunting large sea mammals. The Aleuts' knowledge of tides, currents, and weather patterns was indispensable to their survival, as they relied on the ocean for food, transportation, and even spiritual connection. The Yupik, who lived along the southwestern shores of Alaska, also focused heavily on hunting marine animals, particularly seals, sea otters, and walruses. Their hunting techniques included the use of boats made from animal skins and wooden frames, resembling modern-day kayaks. Like the Inuit, the Yupik also relied on a seasonal hunting calendar, tracking the movements of animals and using their understanding of the land's geography to predict where animals would be at any given time. While marine hunting played an essential role in their diet, land-based animals, including caribou, moose, and bears, also contributed to the Yupik's sustenance. They employed a wide range of techniques, from trapping and snaring to strategic hunting parties that would work together to corral and capture large animals. Caribou, in particular, was a vital resource, providing not only meat but also fur and bone for tools and clothing. The role of women in these hunting societies was multifaceted. While men typically hunted large game, women were responsible for the butchering and processing of the animals. They preserved meat by drying or smoking it, crafted clothing from hides, and wove intricate items such as baskets and mats. In many communities, women were also responsible for making sure the household had the necessary tools, which included everything from knives and spears to nets and traps. In this way, the work of men and women was equally crucial to the survival of the community, and their roles were understood as complementary rather than hierarchical. In a land as vast and difficult as Alaska, transportation was key to survival. The Alaskan Native tribes developed a remarkable variety of methods to navigate their environment, each designed to suit the terrain and conditions they faced. Transportation, like hunting, required knowledge, skill, and a deep understanding of the land. For those living in the Arctic and subarctic regions, travel was often made on foot, but during the winter months, sleds were a common mode of transport. The Inuit were perhaps the most well-known sledders, using sleds pulled by dogs to travel across vast stretches of ice and snow. These sleds, known as kamudik in the Inuit language, were built to carry heavy loads across frozen ground and were essential for transporting supplies, hunting gear, and even the bodies of deceased relatives. Dog sledding became not only a practical necessity but also a cultural symbol, and it remains a key part of many Alaskan Native traditions. Dog sledding, as practiced by the Inuit and other indigenous groups, was also integral to hunting expeditions. Large sleds would be packed with food, tools, and shelter, and sled teams would traverse miles of frozen land in pursuit of game or to engage in intercommunity trade. The dogs used for sledding were strong, hardy animals, bred specifically for the cold conditions and heavy work. These dogs were trained to work together as a team, responding to the commands of their drivers and moving with synchronized precision across the snow. In the coastal regions, where water travel was crucial, the Aleut people relied on the bidarka, a small, lightweight, and highly maneuverable kayak that could be used for hunting and transportation. These boats were made from wood and covered in sealskin or other animal pelts to ensure they were waterproof. Their streamlined design allowed them to move quickly and silently on the water, which was essential for approaching animals without alarming them. The Aleut people became exceptional sea hunters and navigators, using their kayaks to access the most remote and dangerous parts of the coastline, often venturing into areas that were unreachable by land. For the Tlingit and Haida peoples, who lived along the southeastern coast of Alaska, large cedar canoes were the primary mode of transport. These canoes, sometimes capable of holding up to 30 people, were crafted from the massive trees that grew in the region's temperate rainforests. The Tlingit people carved their canoes with precision, using a combination of tools and fire to shape the wood. The result was a sturdy, seaworthy vessel that could withstand the rough seas along the coast. These canoes allowed the Tlingit to travel between islands, to hunt sea otters and whales, and to trade with other coastal tribes. In addition to their hunting and transportation methods, the Alaskan Native tribes had an intricate network of trade routes that spanned the entire region. Trade was essential to their survival, as it allowed them to acquire goods that were not available in their local areas. This included tools, clothing, food, and even ceremonial items. The networks were complex, involving long journeys across the sea, tundra, and forest. Many tribes specialized in particular resources, and they exchanged goods with neighboring groups, creating a web of interdependence that was vital to the well-being of each community. These trade networks also contributed to the social and cultural exchange between tribes. The movement of goods and people across Alaska facilitated not just the sharing of material wealth, but also the sharing of ideas, traditions, and stories. The Alaskan Native tribes were interconnected, not just by trade, but by their shared commitment to sustaining life in one of the harshest environments on Earth. In a way, their transportation systems, their hunting methods, and their trade routes formed a kind of lifeblood that pulsed through the veins of their communities, connecting the people and the land in a way that was as intricate and beautiful as the world they inhabited. The architectural feats of the Alaskan Native peoples are a testament to their ingenuity, resilience, and deep understanding of the environment. As the land itself demanded creativity and resourcefulness, so too did the structures they built to shelter and protect their families. The construction of homes was based not only on the availability of materials, but also on their adaptability to extreme conditions. In addition to the iconic igloos of the Inuit, many other tribes had their own unique building techniques. The Tlingit, for example, were known for their impressive longhouses, which were large, multi-family dwellings constructed from cedar. These longhouses were not only functional but also symbols of clan identity. The intricate carvings on the totem poles that adorned these homes were part of the Tlingit spiritual and social life, depicting stories of their ancestors, mythologies, and important cultural symbols. These homes were built to withstand the rains of southeast Alaska's temperate rainforests, where water is abundant, but shelter must be sturdy enough to endure harsh winds and heavy precipitation. The Aleut people, who inhabited the Aleutian Islands, constructed sod houses known as barabaras. These were small, domed dwellings built into the earth to provide insulation from the extreme cold and strong winds. The roofs were often made from whale ribs or driftwood, and the interiors were carefully arranged to maximize warmth. The structures reflected the resourcefulness of the Aleut people, who had to make the most of limited materials while ensuring their homes could withstand one of the harshest environments on Earth. As these native groups constructed their homes, they also built a relationship with the land itself. The materials used were not just for shelter, they were part of a cultural identity that connected the people to their surroundings. The natural world was never just something to survive. It was a living partner in their existence. The people learned to read the weather, to understand the patterns of migration, and to respect the delicate balance between taking from the land and giving back to it. Spirituality was deeply embedded in every aspect of life for the Alaskan Native peoples, from the animals they hunted to the places where they gathered food. Every element of nature was seen as sacred and interconnected. Many tribes, including the Inuit and Yupik, held animistic beliefs in which the spirit world was ever present. And everything, whether an animal, a rock, or a storm, had a spirit that needed to be respected. Rituals, such as dances, songs, and ceremonies, played a vital role in ensuring harmony between the human and natural worlds. These practices were passed down orally through generations, along with stories that served to teach not only history but also the values of respect, generosity, and interconnectedness. In more recent times, these spiritual traditions have been a source of both pride and challenge, as Western influences, including Christianity and industrialization, took root in Alaska. Many native practices faced the threat of extinction. Yet, a resurgence of interest in traditional culture and spirituality has emerged in recent decades. Alaskan Native youth are increasingly turning to their roots, learning the old songs, dances, and languages, and seeking ways to blend traditional values with modern life. The Native elders, once the primary storytellers and keepers of knowledge, have become vital guides in this cultural renaissance, teaching their grandchildren how to preserve the old ways while adapting to the new world. The fight for cultural preservation is, however, just one part of the challenges faced by the Alaskan Native peoples today. As they struggle to maintain their traditional ways of life, they are also confronted with the ongoing impact of climate change. The very environment that once sustained them is now rapidly changing. As warmer temperatures cause the ice to melt, sea levels to rise, and traditional hunting grounds to vanish, coastal communities, particularly those of the Inuit and Aleut, are finding their homes threatened by the eroding coastlines and shrinking sea ice. In response, many Native communities have turned to advocacy and activism, demanding that their voices be heard in the fight against climate change. They are speaking out about the need for more sustainable development, the importance of preserving their land and traditions, and the necessity of integrating Indigenous knowledge into modern conservation efforts. Alaskan Natives have long been stewards of the land, and their deep connection to it positions them as vital allies in the fight to protect the environment for future generations. Education also plays a critical role in the future of Alaskan Native communities. For many years, Native children were taught in schools that ignored or even belittled their heritage. Today, however, efforts are being made to revitalize Native languages and cultural education within the school system. Bilingual programs, immersion schools, and language preservation projects are helping to keep the Native languages alive, while also giving young people the skills they need to succeed in the modern world. The Alaskan Native peoples have always been a testament to resilience, adaptability, and strength. Their ability to thrive in one of the most inhospitable regions of the world has shaped not only their culture but also their identity. As they navigate the complexities of the modern world, they continue to draw strength from the deep-rooted values that have sustained them for millennia, values of respect for the earth, a sense of community, and a spiritual connection to the world around them. The story of the Alaskan Native peoples is not just a tale of survival. It is a story of enduring hope, an ever-present reminder of the strength of human spirit in the face of adversity. As they face the challenges of the 21st century, the Alaskan Natives continue to adapt, to learn, and to protect the culture that has sustained them for so long. In doing so, they are not only preserving their heritage but also offering valuable lessons to the world about how to live in harmony with nature and each other. The future of the Alaskan Native peoples, much like the land they inhabit, is uncertain, but it is also bright with the promise of renewal. Their resilience will undoubtedly guide them through the challenges ahead, just as it has guided them through the centuries past. And in the process, they will continue to share their rich culture, their wisdom, and their stories with the world. teaching us all about the power of adaptation, the importance of community, and the sacredness of the land we share.